Okay, are y'all able to see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, so yes, welcome to Introduction to Python. So basically for today, we'll be covering functions, your loops, your list, and the datetime library. So before we start, as usual, please access the Colab either using the link or the QR code provided.
Once you guys are done, do let us know in the chat so then we'll move on. Or you can use the reactions. You can raise your hand. Sorry, you can just like click the yes once you're done.
Hello, to the people who just joined, please access the Colab link that we provided before we start. You can access it either by the link or with the QR code. If you run into any issues, feel free to private message one of us, or you can directly message it in the chat. Thank you.
So I just sent the link in the chat again. Just for those who just joining, yeah, just access the collab file from there, and once you're done, just react with a yes. So then we'll move on once everyone is done.
All right. Hello. Good morning to those who just joined us. Before we start, can I get y'all to access the Colab link either using the QR code or by the URL given in the slides? Once you're done, please use the raise hand reaction. Yeah. Thank you.
There's around 8 more people who are not done, so we will wait for them.
We'll be starting in 1 minute. All right, so we'll be moving on with the workshop. So first off, before we start, I'm going to start y'all off with a thing called functions. So basically what functions is that it's blocks of code that has a name. So we call that a function, and basically when you want to call the function or when you want the function to run, you call it using the name. So if, for a fun fact, the function can call itself, and it's actually a natural process called recursion. So now the question is, how do you define a function? Like, how do you give it a name and parameters? So if y'all are able to see my screen here on the left side where I'm highlighting, this is a function. So basically, this is me defining the function, calling it addition, and I'm telling it have these parameters A and B. So you're probably wondering what parameters is. Parameters are basically your arguments, basically like the things that you need to give to the function for it to run. That's basically the gist of it for now. So basically, um, when you want to define a function, you first give it a name. You do define function, and then you give whatever parameters you want to use in here. The parameters, you can add as much as you want. You can do 1 parameter, 2 parameters, 3, or as much as you need. And they're all separated by commas, which is over here. Next, after you press enter, it will automatically indent the code so that it will be underneath the function, and you can tell it whatever to do. For this example, I'm defining the function as addition, and what it does is basically I'm going to make it add up whatever I want. So um, when it comes to functions, it's important for you to do either return or print. So there's a difference between the two, because print basically just prints the output, but return returns the output. Return is something that you can use for, like, let's say subsequently as we go along. Let's say you have 2 functions that you want to use. You can experiment by seeing that when you use print, the output will not save, but when you return it, the output would save. So that's all you need to know for, like, at this point in time. I'll be going through that even more in detail later on. So let's say for now, if I want to run this, let's say I want to call addition right now, and I want to give the parameters assign A as 2 and B as 3. Then if I run it, what this does is that basically, give me a minute. Okay, so when I do this addition 2 comma 3, is that I'm assigning A as 2 and B as 3. So as you can see here, when I ask the function to print out A, it will print 2 and B as 3, just like the parameters shown up here. Then it will run this, which is total equals to 2 plus 3, which results in 5, and it will print out 5. The output will be 5 because I'm telling the function to, hey, after you've calculated the total, I want you to return the output. So that's basically how I do for functions. Then next up is recursion. So what recursion is that it's a recursive function that basically calls upon itself. So recursion, right? In order for recursion to work, it must have a base test case to stop the recursion and allow the function to complete. So in other test cases, it will call itself with new values. So what this means is that there must be something, or a base case as we call it, to stop function. So down here in this stars function that I've created, it's if num underscore enemy underscore shapes is equals to 0. That's my base case. I want it to return as an empty string. But if it is not 0, then I want it to return this line of code over here. So just the demo. This is what it will look like. So for recursion, if let's say the base case is true, then it will automatically run the base case. But if let's say I do 1, for example, then it will fail this one, and it will carry on with this. Yeah. Likewise, this also happens with 2, because it's also important to know that when you do recursion, you must at least negate at some point or find a way to stop it, so that it doesn't run into a recursive error. Because if I do this, let's say I remove the -1, as you can see, it's executing the cell, and you'll run into an error. Python will throw you a recursion error because it does not know when to stop, and the code will basically just keep going and going and going and going nonstop. That's why it's important to have and there's something to stop the code, which in this case is this -1 over here. Yeah. Next off, we have Lambda. So what Lambda is that it's similar to functions, but it only has one expression. So a function basically has unlimited expressions. So just a demo. Lambda will look somewhere similar to these two lines of code. So basically, this is, if I run this, for this line of code, I'm saying that for Lambda, I want an A variable. And once you get the A variable, I want it to be added to 10, and I want you to return that output. So when I do print x 5, I'm basically telling, hey, okay, so I've assigned A as 5, and what I want you to do is add 15 to it. Likewise with this, you can add in as much variables as you want to do. In this case, we've added A, B, and C, and we've separated with commas. So when you want to run X, you have to give three parameters. In this case, I've given 2, 3, and 4. So once I've got 2, 3, and 4, A is equals to 2, which will be multiplied with B equals to 3, so that would be 6, negated with C will be 4. So it will output as 2. Yeah. This also works in a function like this, where let's say you want to define a function, and I've called this function my function. I've given it a parameter n, and I'm telling it to return the lambda, which is I want A, and I want A to be multiplied by n. So what this does is that for my doubler, I'm telling them, okay, my doubler will run my function at 2. And when you print it, you're assigning A as 11. Yeah. So you feel to go check it out if you want and try to experiment with it on your own. Yeah. So that's the gist of it for Lambda. I believe there should be some examples that you can try out in your Colab if you want to go with it. But we'll carry on with loops for now. Okay, so for loops, there are two kinds of loops. There's while loops and there's for loops. So basically what loops are is that it will loop until the conditions return as false, break, or continue is used. And while loops and for loops, you're probably wondering like, oh, when do I use each? Because they sound practically the same at this point in time. Well, for while loops, you generally use them when you have a data structure or generator function that isn't available, or when you don't know how many times you need to loop it. This is useful when like the break condition doesn't depend on which kind of sequence. Okay, so I'll be showing y'all an example. Okay. Basically, in this first line of code here, which is factorial underscore while, is that I'm using the while function to return a factorial output. So what I'm doing is that, again, I'm defining the function. I'm calling it factorial underscore while, and I'm giving it a parameter n. And what I'm doing basically is I'm assigning I to 1, result into 1. So I'm saying that, hey, okay, whatever the user inputs, let's say n is 3 in this case, which I will run later. As long as 1 is less than 3, I want you to take result and you multiply it by 1. And when you're done, I want you to add 1 into I, and then repeat the process over and over until this returns as false. So that's what I'm trying to ask factorial underscore while to do. And once you're done with it, I want you to take result and I want you to give it as an output, throw it back at me. So when I run this, it will return as 6. So if I were to go into more detail into this and show you what's happening inside, it will look like this. So what basically happens here is that, hold on. Okay, there you go. So what happens is the first time it goes through it, while I is equals to 1. So as you can see here, I is equals to 1. the result will return as 1 because I given result as 1. So 1 times 1 equals to 1. And once that's done, I'm either telling them, hey, add 1 into I. So then it will return as 2, which is over here. I is equals to 2. And this will continue on all the way until, because I've set I should be less than or equals to n. Once I is equals to 4, it will stop the loop and it will just break it. Yeah. So this is what a while loop will generally look like. Yeah. Next, we have for loops. So for loops, again, is a loop that iterates through a collection or iterable object or a generator function. So it's generally used when there's a ready-made collection or when you know how many times you want to iterate through the thing. And it allows you to cycle through the collection and be used. So just to clarify, iterable objects are stuff like your your strings, tuples, and yeah, objects. So an example of which is this. As I've written here, again, what I've done is that I've defined a function. I've called it print underscore. Okay. I basically called this function print underscore num underscore to underscore max or print num to max. So what I wanted to do is that I want to print I all the way until the maximum. So what it does is that for this line of code, I'm telling it for I in range of max plus 1. When you do this, I will automatically be assigned as 0. It's important to know that for loops, if you don't clarify what it is, Python will throw you an error saying that there is no, this variable has not been given any assignment prior to being called. So basically what that means is that you didn't assign it anything. But for this case, because I've written I in range of max plus 1, what it does is that it will automatically assign it with 0. And it's important to know, like, let's say when you use range, you have to add 1 to it if, let's say, you're dealing with an integer because it will stop at max. Yeah. So when I run this will print 0 because I starts with 0 and 1, 2, and 3. Now, if you're probably confused with why I have to add plus 1. So like I said earlier, you need to add it if, let's say, you want 3 to be in the output. Because if I remove this, it will only stop all the way until 2. Yeah, so that's important to know if, let's say, you want to use range, especially with the integers, when you do length of a certain string, for example, or like how many elements are in this data structure. Yeah. Okay. So carrying on, we also have break and continue. So break and continue are special operators. So what it does is that break can be used to completely stop the loop, and continue can be used to stop the current iteration and continue with the next iteration. So just to illustrate, here's one example, which is define count underscore odd. So what I want here is that I want it to return only the odd numbers from whatever number I'm telling them to read it by. So let's say I'm telling them, I want you to see count underscore odd all the way until 5. So I run this. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, basically in this line of code, this will see that modulo 2 equals to 0, which means that if it's an even number, I want you to skip the current iteration and continue with the next iteration. And I want you to, oh, sorry. This isn't to see count, it is to add the total for every odd number that's in there. Yeah. So basically what this does is that when it's an even number, I'm telling them to skip it. Just skip it. Don't count it in. Just completely ignore it as if it wasn't there. But if it fails this condition that I've set here, I wanted to add it into the result, which is R over here. And I want you to continue on with the iteration. Sorry. So what basically count underscore odd does, or what I've defined count underscore odd does, is define the total for only the odd numbers. Now let's say if I put 6 in here, it will still return as 9 because when it counts all the way until 6, 6 is an even number, so it will be ignored. So that's what continue does, and this is one way you can use continue. And then I'm going to bring you through break, because break is sort of similar to continue, but not really, because it will completely stop the loop. So in this case, I've defined the function called letters underscore battle, and I tell them that your parameters, the one that you need to be looking out for, is this string over here. So I've given them this list of vowels, which is your A, I, E, O, U. And I want you to count. This is I want you to count for vowels. I want you to count for consonants. So for every element in the string, is that if the element is in the vowels, or at least the element is A, I, E, O, or U, I want you to add 1 into vowel. But if it's not, I want you to add it into consonant. And I'm telling them that if the vowel is equals to 5, or the consonant is equals to 5, then it will break. It will stop the loop completely. So if the vowel is more than the consonant, I wanted to say that vowels is the winner in this case, because in letters battle, I want to see whether there's more vowels or more consonants in the output. Yeah. So when I run this, it will show that there's 5 consonants and there's 3 consonants. Yeah. So this is how you use break. Yeah. Okay. So before we carry on, we have a small challenge for you to try out with. So what we want you to do is that we want you to count the number of elements that is found in the list, which I believe should be in the Colab, including the elements in the list nestled within the list using loops and recursion. So we'll give you about a couple of minutes for you to try it out. Yeah. Okay. To answer the question on what we're doing right now, I'm giving y'all time to try out this challenge, which is counting elements. I believe there should be a workspace in your Colab right now to try out, which is basically what we want you to do is that we want you to try counting the number of elements that is found in the list, including the elements in the list nestled within the list using loops and recursion. Yeah. If you run into any issues, or let's say you don't know how to do, you can either private message us or just type it in the chat, or you can just wait. It should be okay. If you go to your Colab, hold on. Okay. It should be all the way down here. Oh, sorry, I didn't give you all the list. Okay, sorry. For the amendments, the list is this. Please copy this down in your Colab. Very sorry. Okay. Yeah. So if you want to look for this, which is the workspace, this should be in your Colab. Just scroll all the way down and you'll be able to find this. And please copy this part. I'll leave this on for your reference. And I'll copy this in the chat.
If you guys are done with the task, do react with by raising up your hand so that we know.
We'll give you a few more minutes before we go through the challenge. Yeah. If you have any problems or like any issues or any questions, feel free to ask in the chat or private messages. Yeah.
As mentioned, if you are once you're done with the challenge, do raise your hand so that we know. And if you have questions or you're unable to complete the task, do let us know in the chat so that we can try and help, or at least we know what issues to address later.
Uh, I'll give you one more minute before we go through. So we'll start the going through challenge at 9:55. Yeah. Okay, so right now it's 9:55, and I'll be going through with you the challenge. So basically, this is what I did to count the elements. So what I did is I'm defining the function, which is count underscore LA, or in other words, is shortened for count the elements, and telling them your parameters that you need to look for is LST or list. So I'm referencing I. I'm telling I you're assigned with the value of 0. Um, and I'm telling them for every element in the list, if the element is found to be a list, um, I want you to do recursion, and I want you to call yourself again. But instead of list, this time I want you to put in the element. Um, and then after that, once this function is done, it will be assigned into result, and then it will be added into I. So if previously I was 0, then if this is found to be, let's say, 2, for example, then it will be 0 plus 2. Um, but if the element is not a list, let's say it's an integer, then I want you to just add 1 into I. And once you're done with all this, and all the elements in the list are accounted for already, I want you to return I. So in the list that I gave you, which is this LST 1, 2, 2, 3, 2, basically there's 3 elements here. But what I want you to do in this objective, because I've told y'all to find all the elements, including the ones nestled within the list, which means also to look into 1, 2 separately. So the answer would be 5. So when I run this, it will return as 5. So to take a closer look into this, is that okay? So basically, we take a closer look into what I've done is that I've asked them to look into LST, which is this list that I gave you. And what it does is that because it checks through every element, first it will check this part, which is 1, 2 inside, which will return this when it runs this line of code. And it will check whether it's a list. And hey, it turns out that it's a list. So it will return this, which is nestled list found. And what it will do is that it will do recursion just to go through the list again and return the number of elements that are found within that list. And what I did is that once you found out how many result, what's the result, I want you to return it, show it to me, what you got. And then because this returns as I equals I plus result. So this would be 0 plus 2, which is basically 2. Once that is over, it will go through 2 comma 3, which is the next element of the list, which is 2 comma 3, and it will do the same thing. But when we go here, which is about here, 2, you will find that, hey, the type of 2 is an integer. It's not a list. So what it does is that it will completely ignore this, and it will just directly go here, and it will return I, because I'm adding the values to it. So this is one way you can go through this challenge. Yeah. Okay, so basically that's it for the challenge, and next will be list, and I'll be passing over the time to reset.
Yes, hello. So hold on. I will present the slides on my side. Mm, Yes. Okay. Can you guys, are you guys able to see the screen? Guess not.
No.
Mm, Give me a moment. Are you able to see it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will be going through the list right now. So list is a type of it's an iterable object, and Leon in the count alley, the list is what was used to store the elements. So list can be used to store any form of variables like strings, integers, float, boolean values, as well as other lists, tuples, and dictionaries inside. So when you store a list within a list, it's what we call nested lists. And lists are mutable, and what it means is that it can be the items within a list are ordered, can be changed, and they allow duplicate values. And items are indexed, which means that each of the item has a number assigned to it, a number assigned to it, which is also their order. So you can create empty lists with either square brackets or the list function. So here are the operators for lists. Okay, so first is dot append, and what that would do is add an element at the end of the list, and dot clear would clear all of the elements from the list. So I will be demonstrating that right now on Visual Studio. Mm. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Hold on a moment. I can't access the other file right now. That's really odd. Okay. I think something is not working at the moment. Okay. Are you still able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, sure. So I'll just create a list, and so if I print out the list, it will show all the elements in the list. And if I do dot append, so list dot append, say I want to append another string. Okay, say if I append a boolean value true. Now if I print list, at the end of it, the boolean value true which I added is now at the back of the list. If I do list dot clear and then I print it,
There'll be nothing.
sorry, what?
There'll be nothing.
Yep, correct. There's nothing, as you can see. So the next operator is copy. Lag. Okay. Okay, dot copy and dot count. So dot copy copies the list, so you can say x equals to list dot copy, and count counts number of elements with a specified value. So within the brackets, you specify a value of the element, and within the list there could be multiple, zero, or even one element, and you return the number of the element. So in this case, if I create another list, okay, say I do this again where I reassign the list. So now list would be this again. Hold on. So if I do x equals to list dot copy, and I print x, x is the same. X is the same as the list. So if I do x equals to list, it will return as true. X is list should return as false because it's so dot copy means that the list, the values within the list is the same. However, they're not the same memory. They're not stored as the same item. It's two separate lists. And so now say I append a few more similar values into x. So I do x dot append 4 and I run it a few times. And if I do print x now, you notice that there's multiple 4. And if I do x dot count to demonstrate the count function, and if I want to count 4, there is 6. So as you can see, there are 6 4s within the list x. So yes. Okay. Okay. Next we have dot extend and dot index. So dot extend is in a way similar to dot append, where it adds element of a list to the end of the current list. However, dot extend doesn't take in it can take in another list or another tuple or dictionary. Dot index returns the index of the first element of the specified value. So going back to the example here, if I do if I do dot index 4, you return 0, and it won't return the ones at the back because it will return the first one from the start. Also, do note that Python, when it counts the index, it starts at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I do x dot index 4, it should return 0. If I do 8, it should return 1. And if I do, so currently list would be this 4812 hello, and x is this. If I do list dot extend x, if I do print list, now all the elements of x is added to the back of list. So early on list was this, and x is this. So you notice that where hello, which is the last element of the original list, ended, all the x is now added to it. Okay. Dot insert inserts an element at a specified position. So unlike extend or append, which adds at the back, you can use dot insert to insert it at a position using the index. And dot pop removes the element at the specified position or index. So say I want to remove hello, which is in this case the index will be 3. So I can do list dot pop 3. If I print list, the hello there will be gone, as you can see. And if I do list dot insert hold on, 4, and I do and I do and I do print list. You notice that at the after the index, sorry, at index 4, hello is added. So if I do, if I, so this, so the first variable here is the first parameter, sorry, is the index where the element followed by would be added. Oh, okay. Next, you have dot remove. It removes the first item with specified value. So compared to dot pop, pop takes in the index or the position of the item, and dot remove takes in the value of the item. And dot reverse reverses the order of the list. So going back to the list, if say we remove, if we do, so if we go back to dot remove 4, it would remove the first 4. So then the list would be dot remove 4 and print list. The 4 at the start will be removed. You start with 8. So I can do this dot reverse and print list. The order of the list will be reversed. So then you notice everything at the start is not at the front, and everything at the front is at the back. Yes. Okay. So we
Seth, if you're talking right now, we can't hear you.
yes, I was muted. Grandpa things. Okay. Anyways, back. Okay, so as I was saying, dot sorts the list, and delete would delete items in the list between the given index. So say I delete something from hello all the way to this hello. So that would be from 5 to 8. So I can do delete this 5 8, and I do print this. Wait, right, I forgot that the okay. So I forgot that the last index 8 would not be actually deleted, so it goes from 5 to 7. If you do 5 to 8, you actually only delete 5, 6, and 7. So now if I want to delete hello, I will have to delete 5. And now hello, the other hello is gone. So for full list of the list operators, you can scan the QR code here to get the more of the list operators. Hold on, I'm having some technical difficulties with my slides and Visual Studio Code.
In the meantime, I'll screen share with you the QR code to access the other links, such as the full list operators and like, yeah, give me a minute. Okay, if y'all are able to see my screen, I've shared the QR code and link with y'all. Yeah.
Okay, never mind. I am now back and okay. I'll now be moving on to the data library and I'll be sharing the slides. Again, presenting the slides. Okay. So if it loads. Give me a moment. Okay. So now we go on to the datetime library, which is included with Python. So there are 4 classes for the datetime library. So the first is date, then there's time, datetime, and time delta. So the date class only has dates, where time only has time, and datetime has both information, both date and time objects. Time delta is used to compare the difference between two dates, two times, or two date times. Okay, so you can do datetime to get the date and time, or you can do datetime.now or datetime.today. All of them will work to return the date and time. So so this is a list of information that it will output. Okay, so .today, as mentioned before, can be used to get the current date and time. You can do okay. Dot weekday is used to dot weekday is used to return an integer value of the weekday. So 0 is for Monday and 6 is for Sunday. Okay, so ISO calendar returns, it's a method that is used on the datetime class. It returns a tuple of the ISO year, week number, and weekday. So so what this does, it actually reformats your datetime information into the ISO style, and which is a different calendar format. This will be clearer later when I go through the example in the Jupyter file. Okay. So datetime.time is used to extract the time information from the datetime, and you can use this. So what is included is the hour, minute, second, and microseconds. And shift time is used to format the datetime objects or date objects into strings. Okay, so sure if I can. Okay, so um, okay, so I do from datetime import asterisk, which imports the datetime library. And okay, just to demonstrate that now and today works, both now and today can get your date, time, and time objects. So both of them are the exact same, but you might notice that the result is different. That's because Python takes a while to uh, process this. So there's actually a bit of like a 1 microsecond difference. So you can also do datetime dot date, sorry, and it will return the date. Sorry, date. Okay, hold on. I made a mistake. Okay, so if I do x equals datetime dot today, you assign x the variable with this information here. So you assign it this data, and if I print x, you output this. And if I do, and so and if I run it, so this is the output. And so if I do datetime.weekday x, where x is the our datetime information, you will output the integer value as it was in the slides of the weekday for today, which today is a Saturday, so it should be 5, as you can see. So here's just some simple code that, well, outputs takes in the integer values for the weekday and tells you the day. So if I run it, it will tell you that today is a Saturday. So okay, so now I'll be demonstrating a bit more of the different classes. So if I do, so X again is our datetime object where we got it with the datetime dot today. If I do dot time and I print v our other variables, it will give us only the time data. And if I do datetime dot now again to declare O as another variable with the new datetime object, I can do the dot hour, dot minute, dot second, and microsecond, year, month, and day to get the various information. So you can see in O has the year here, the month, the day, hour, minutes, seconds, and the microseconds here. So in order to, you can use this in order to extract the data out without doing any form of string slicing. So if I run it, you notice that the information from here comes out. Okay. Another method to format data, to format the date time is using the shift time. So if I go back to the slides, there is a list of all the methods to format codes, and you can scan the QR code, or Celine will send the link in the chat right now. So what shift time does, it converts your datetime object into a string. So what's the difference between a datetime class object and a datetime string is that a string is a string and it cannot be used with any more datetime functions. So just to demonstrate this, if I do type o dot shift time. So what the o dot shift time percent a, what this does, if it converts the o data and it outputs in this format. So in this case, percent a would be, it gets the day, the full day. If I do so I can do something like percent a, percent d dash percent y, and okay, so I need to print out the file. Okay, this gives us the current date in this format where it's month, day, year. And if I do the type, this is actually, this is a string. However, if I do type O, it will be a datetime class. So the difference is that you can use O in the datetime library methods like strift time or dot out or dot hour dot minute dot second. Whereas once you do dot strift time, it converts it to a string, and you can't actually use it with any of the other methods. So the other classes is date and will be date. So a date dot today would out. Sorry, I forgot to add print. If I do date, it only outputs the date, and you can also do o dot time, and it will give the time only. So earlier on we mentioned that there's 4 different classes. So it's date, time, and today, and date. Sorry. So you notice that time is only time again, and date is only the date, whereas date time would be contain both date and time information. Okay, so you notice that in all of these examples, okay, so what this does is, if I make this simpler to read, it converts O in and uses the time function and converts it to time only. And you notice at the start, if I don't print it out, that there's a datetime.time at the start. What this tells you that the class is a time class. As for this, datetime.now is the datetime class. And as for this, again, as I mentioned before, once you do type o.strift time, once you use strift time, convert this datetime time on date class into a string, it is a string type. And there's actually a method to convert strings into the time on date classes. And the reason you want to convert a string to this class is so that you can use the time delta function to compare 2 different time. So say you want to compare the current date to a set date, say somewhere in the future. For example, if you want to know how many more days till you reach the date, you need to convert the date that you want to compare with into a date time class in order for time delta to compare. So this would be strip time, strp time instead of strft time. So this converts a string into a date time. So the way you do it is the first one is your string with your information. The second is the format of the string. So the legal format codes here is the same as the one for strift time. And if you run this and assign z the variable, and if you do type z, it would be a datetime class. So what this did was convert this date format. So %day will be the date, capital B is the full name of the month, and capital Y is the full year. And then you convert this into a datetime class. So for example, so the same thing applies here for strift time. So there's various ways to use the format code. Say you want to do something like, say that there are dashes in between in between your string, something like this. You will have to change the format. If I run this, it will work. And however, if your formatting is wrong, say for example there is no dash here. If you run it, sorry, and if you run it where the format is wrong, so you notice that here that there's a dash, whereas here there's no dash. There's a value error, and it says that the time data does not match format. So the format they use here and here has to be correct, has to be exactly the same. Otherwise, you output an error. So if you run this now, there is no error. And once you convert a string to a datetime object, you can do any of the methods here. So say you want to do datetime dot. Say you want to get what day this date, what weekday this is. So you can go back to, for example, you can do the datetime dot weekday Z, and then it'll be a 3, so then you know that this is a Thursday. So I think now we can move on to the Q&A part of our workshop. So if you have any questions, I believe you can unmute now, or you can type in the chat. Celine? Can date time be used for? So date time, again, it's used to extract the current. So as you can see, earlier on I did mention that there is the date time, or date.now.today, which gets the current date. So this might be useful in the case, say, you need the current date or time for whatever reasons. So one example where I use it personally is when I need to save screenshot files. So in order to organize my files better, I use the current date, so that I know that. So it's a repetitive task. So I use the date information to name my files and then to save it. So usually usually it's more of getting the current date and current time. It's an inbuilt library to do so, and and it doesn't require external libraries, because it's a simpler method lah. And the time, however, the time delta is, like I mentioned again, it's to compare different dates and times. Does that answer your question? If not, I think Celine may have a better explanation, because I think that was a bit confusing.
If you have any other questions, you can either private message us or you can send in the chat right now.
Alright, I forgot to mention one more function of the datetime library, which is the sleep. Give me a moment, I will share my screen again, because right, okay, I forgot the time.sleep. Okay, so what this does, sleeps Python for a set number of time, and within the brackets is the number of the time in seconds you want it to sleep. So just to demonstrate this, I can do print date time dot now. I cannot spell time, which prints time. And if I do time dot sleep for 10 seconds, and if I print the time again, the time should differ by 10 seconds, because what this does, it stops the code, or stops Python for 10 seconds. Ah. Hold on, I may have messed up slightly. Right. Okay, there we go. So So the time is 10 o'clock, 33 minutes and 37 seconds. And after the code is completed, you notice that the time differs by 10 seconds. So the code actually works and it stopped the code for 10 seconds. So the difference between these two times is 10 seconds and a bit more because the code takes about to run, as mentioned. Okay, Celine will now take over. Celine.
All right. I think we can accept one more question. If y'all have, feel free to put it in the chat or private message any one of us. Yeah.
Okay, somebody asked, what does it mean? Oh, sorry, how to define date time? Could you please explain to me what do you mean by define date time? I'm kind of confused. Like define? What do you mean by define? How to import date time? How can we add our current? Oh, add our current time zone. Okay, there's actually a method to define a current time zone, but okay, within my system, that the time zone is correct because it's actually taking in the system time, which if you set it correctly, it should be a current time zone. However, there's actually ways to get UTC time and using UTC time get the time for different time zones. So I will show that now, and also how to import the datetime library, because I believe somebody also asked a question about that. So let me share my screen. Okay, so how to import the datetime library? So there is the from datetime import asterisk. So the asterisk is all. So when you do this, you import the entire library. So you run this code in order to use it. If you don't run this code, it will Python will return an error and state that there is no such date time. At the bottom, I also use import time, so I can use the time.sleep method. So all you need to do to in order to use it, or is just write this line of code from datetime import or you can also do import. There's also another method where you can do import date time. This also works. However, I prefer from datetime import, but that's just a personal preference.
Is it because you can import particular things?
Um, I guess, I mean, in a way, it's not
Sorry
okay.
for that.
From date time import or by particular things, actually you don't. Okay, some say this very okay. Actually, it doesn't need to be from date time import, or you can actually import certain elements of date time. Actually, but you can import date time actually works fine. Both are okay. But if you want to import specific parts of date time, you can actually do from date time import something itself all. But both works. Like if I believe I can do from data import today, and that means that only dot today will work if I am correct. Give me a moment. Okay, never mind. Okay, all right. Somebody asked how to do the time zone. Right, let me code that. Give me 5 minutes to code that because I need to write a function to do that. Someone asked with reference to what I said about from date time import asterisk and you can specify certain things. Somebody asked that whether from date time import date will only allow the date function to work, and yes, that is what I mean by that. So let me just share my screen real quick. All my old research. Okay, so if you can see right now, I did from date time import date. So I'll just run it to prove it real quick. And I can do date.today, that runs fine. But if I do datetime.today, it doesn't work because you only imported the date function. And datetime is not, well, it's not the datetime function, so it doesn't work. However, import, if I do import datetime, which imports the entire library, which includes the date time, the time, and the date modules, this will now, hold on. Okay, you know what? It's, I think it's just Python being Python. Okay. Okay. If I import all instead of importing just date, it now works. But if I only import date, only this will work because, like I mentioned before, it only imports that specific part within the entire datetime library. Whereas this imports everything, this only imports something. Usually, the only reason you want to import a specific part of a library is if you need to save space or save memory. But in the case of, say, you're running this on a modern desktop or modern laptop, usually that doesn't matter much.
Are there any other questions for us?
Okay, right. I forgot the what was it? The the question regarding UTC, right? So there's actually different time zones. You can do like PYTZ, which is time zone, and there's also the UTC now and time zone methods, which allows you to get the UTC time, or which is basically no, because if you know that Singapore is GMT +8, UTC time is +0. So you can then, using the UTC time, you can then use the time zones. So you can take in time zones of location, or you can do the GMT +8, +7, -8, or whatever. Either of those formats work, and then you'll format the UTC time and get the time for that particular location. So if I do something like, hold on, let me get my Jupyter working. Okay. Give me a moment. Okay, because I currently don't have the libraries installed, I can't actually demonstrate them. But I will. I think, okay, does anyone have actually any more questions? Because I'm sorry, but I can't demonstrate the UTC thing right now because I don't have the correct libraries installed, the Python time zone library installed to demonstrate the different time zone functions at the moment. So does anyone have any more questions?
Okay, so that brings us to the end of this workshop. So thank you so much for joining us for the workshop. And let's say if you have any more questions, you can always contact us via our email or our GitHub, which is over here. And I'm pretty sure it's in the slides sent to you all as well. Yeah, so I'll be passing the time over to the admin. Yep, thank you once again.